Let's bring him in now. Author, former NBA player, Adonal Foyle. Adonal, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. And Adonal, you wrote this great book, Winning the Money Game. Where did the passion come from for you with this topic of athletes and money?
I think for me, one of the big things throughout the course of my career, I've always tried to be advocate for players. As a union representative, I spend the majority of my time as part of the Players Association, working with players and trying to address a lot of the concerns. I don't know exactly in terms of where it comes from innately or what, but I just felt that it was when you see a problem, you should try to address it. So as a part of my my master's thesis in sports psychology, during the course of my MBA career, I started doing my master's. And then one of the things I wanted to write about was transition. And I interviewed, I think, 10 retired basketball players and talked to them about what are some of the challenges they had in retirement. And a lot of them talk about, financial concerns. And not so much that they were broke, but they was like, I wish I had, more people talking to me about how to save and do a better job saving. So that's kind of the odyssey of the book.
Now, how was transition for you, going from NBA player to retire? How was that transition?
I thought that, I had prepared myself. I went back to school. I got my master's. I finished my undergraduate. I was, I thought I was ready. When I hurt my knee, and I thought, it's not fun anymore to try to compete when you feel like you're not completely there. So when I decided to hang it up, I thought, okay, so I'm done. I'm just going to walk away and things are going to be great. And I find it to be, for me, more emotionally difficult. It was that void that was there, those initial months of not having that purpose of getting up every day, playing basketball, practicing, watching what you eat. Basketball was almost a way of life. And for me, that transition, I think, was very difficult because I didn't feel like I had that thing, that purposeful thing, that thing I'm going to get up and do every single day. So it was about finding something that will kind of replace that passion and finding a kind of a path that will make me happy.
Now, when I look at various athletes, a lot of times, a lot of issues they run into is their own family. And coming into the league, not really having a lot of money, they're almost a savior for the family. In a lot of ways, I want to ask you this. How does one say no to family and friends? Because in a lot of ways, that's the biggest problem for a lot of these athletes.
Yeah, and that's not a very easy, and it's not a very easy thing to do. And I think in part because, and I talk a little bit about this in the book, is that the psychological factors that go into it, because when you have a family member, it's not just like telling a family member, hey, no, you kind of know this person. This person probably helped you when you were growing up. They probably was there in your corner, prevent you from being bullied. They might have been there giving you their last dollar. So it's not as easy in terms of saying, well, just no. I mean, if it's some stranger comes off the street and asks you for money, that's an easier thing to say no to. But if you say no to somebody that you know, somebody that you love, somebody that may withhold love if you don't do what they want, I mean, it becomes more difficult. So part of the challenge for athletes is to decide how they want to help their family member or the entourage or the people in their life, because I think part of the thing is that it's coming from a very good place. You want to help the people that was there for you. I mean, I was able to help my family. I was able to send them to school and help them to do, extraordinary stuff with their life. But therein lies the problem. You have to decide what is a limitation and what it is you want to do for them. And once that becomes clear, have a conversation about that. Have a conversation about how you want that to be the thing, the gift, whatever it is that you're going to give them, that hopefully that was going to transform their lives.
We're talking to author, former NBA player, Adonal Foyle. Great book out, Winning the Money Game. I want to ask you this now, and child support and babies out of wedlock. That's another thing that seems to cripple players. I mean, we've seen it. Evander Holyfield, Jason Caffey, and the list goes on and on. Talk about that.
part of the difficulty is there is this everybody thinks of finance in terms of, could a guy count from 1 to 10? Do they know what is the value of money, where to invest? And certainly those are concerns for players. But there is these kind of sociological and psychological concern, like we were talking about earlier. One of these sociological things is how you choose to bring a child into the world. And why is that important? Is that it's important because you could pay child support could cost you anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000 a month for 18 years. So the manner and how you bring a kid into the world has a big impact on your financial future. And then there's of course there's much more important stuff as well, like how is that child being raised, and what is kind of the future of that child emotionally, and being in a sustainable, loving relationship. Then you have that kind of concern as well. So how we choose to procreate has a great deal to do with how we preserve our wealth, but also preserve the well-being of the child as well.
Now, I know you said you've talked to players over the years and given them advice. How is it usually received?
Not always. I had to learn how to do things a little bit better. I must say sometimes I'm kind of brash in the way I respond and some of the way I talk to people. I'm very straightforward. I always consider myself a no-nonsense kind of person. So when you ask me a question, I tend to be blunt. And I had to learn over the years, how to be more subtle in that approach. But I think it has been, a lot of players who read it, what they like about it is the simplicity of it. I wasn't, trying to be highfalutin. I wanted it to be accessible, especially for young readers. I think that financial literacy is one of those areas where we no longer have it in lots of schools. We don't get an opportunity to do it in college. And our parents sometimes don't talk to us about it. So I wanted to make this book accessible to everybody. I want everybody to be able to get something out of it. And I think, so the way it's been received is, I think it's kind of in the way that I wanted it to, which is, you could be critical, you could be sad, you could be, have a varying amount of emotions, but the one that I want you to be is be proactive and hopefully go out, take a look at your finances and see what you can learn as an athlete or as a non-athlete, see what you can learn about kind of reshaping and refocusing your financial future.
I want to ask you this, and obviously when you came into the league, you come from humble beginnings. You didn't come from a lot of money. When you first got into the league and you started getting an NBA paycheck, did you almost fall into the trap at any time in your career in terms of spending excess money?
Oh, we all do. I mean, I don't think that anybody could go in. I think I went into the league at probably 19 or 20. I don't think anybody can go in to becoming a professional athlete and not really have those kind of temptations. And I don't think I will be credible in terms of trying to write a book if you don't have some of the same challenges that everybody has. All of us in our lives, all of us as athletes, as non-athletes, have these amazing challenges that tries to define who we are. What I always say is that hopefully the mistakes that you make as a young person is not as big as the mistake you might make a little bit older. So if you can make like some mistakes when you're younger and the mistakes happen to be contained and doesn't spill out over everything, then you're good. But if you make mistakes where it's too big and you can't recover from it, those are the big mistakes you want to avoid. So for me, I had to deal with issues of family issues, trying to decide how I wanted to empower my family and saying no to them, even though when it was difficult. I think I become more isolated later on in my career because I didn't want to have those conversations in terms of those financial conversations with people. So I tried to isolate myself, or I cut it off at the pass. And then, suddenly in terms of personal expenditures, everybody has an addiction. I remember growing up, I had one pair of shoes. And when I got into the league, I think I probably bought about 50 pairs. So of all the things you can do, that is not buying 15 cars at $400,000. But we all have little addiction problem, and we all have stuff that we know in our daily lives that we have to put a curb on, right? And but for me, I had to understand what that was coming from. That was coming from a place where not having this thing for so long, the tendency is to want to overdo it, and you have to really curb those desires and really making sure that there are things that you really do need to help you and make your life better.
We're talking to former NBA player Adonal Foyle, and now author, Winning the Money Game, and a great book out there. Make sure you go purchase it. Earlier in your career and during your career, I was reading a story where you left $19 million on the table to go to another team. Similar situation, David West, who left about $11 million to go to the Spurs. Take us through your mindset in terms of leaving that type of money on the table.
The most important thing about those kind of decisions that I think we tend to think of athletes as not being human, right? Is that, well, I will never do that. And the one thing I always say, you have to understand the emotional mindset of a player. When a player makes a drastic decision like that, the first thing that I want to congratulate them is that they're making a decision, hopefully, that they've thought of, and they've thought of, like, what are the repercussions of doing this, and what does this mean for my financial future? When I make that decision, it's not that I wanted to leave the Warriors, it's that I've been with the Warriors for 10 years, I think, at that point, and I wanted, I didn't know how much longer I was going to play in the league, but I wanted an opportunity to do the thing that I spend most of my life doing, which is I wanted to play. I wanted to be part of a team, not that I wanted 20 minutes a game or 30 minutes a game. It was like I just wanted to be part of a team and really being utilized. And I didn't think the Warriors at that point with Don Nelson wanted to go in that direction with me. So I thought it was best, for my emotional well-being as well as for the future of that franchise and for my future and for my love of the game to make a decision that makes sense to me. The one thing that I always say about, money is that was money that I didn't earn. I didn't play. That money was for years that I was supposed to play there, and I didn't want to be there anymore, and they didn't want me to be there anymore. So it was something that we needed to do and to part ways in a good way and making sure that nobody is feeling, bad about it, is that you make decisions all the time. The most important thing is that you can't let money become the only way that you make important decisions in your life. Money has to be one part of that. And if I have the $90 million, would I want it right now? Absolutely. But when you're making decisions, can't just be about money. It has to be about your emotional well-being. It has about your future. It has so many more considerations. So when I think of what David did, I have to think about, this is probably what he feels is the best decision. And the last thing I would say about it is, it's not how much money you make, it's how much money you keep. And if you keep that in mind, you'll never be ruled by money, but at the same time, you can understand the value of money. And that's what I want people to get out of it, is that money becomes part of the thing you need in order to have a good life, but it's not the only part of the thing that you need in order to have a great life. It's one part of that.
You spent 13 years in the NBA. You've seen a lot over the years. What's the craziest thing you've seen in terms of player spending?
I think that for me, probably the decision of all guys bring kids into war. I've seen numerous instances where a guy comes to me and is paying $10,000, $15,000 a month, and he's not being able to see his kids, and the mother is withholding the kids from him. I've seen situations where guys buy a ridiculous amount of cars at really insane prices. I'm not talking about a $30,000 or $60,000 car. I'm talking about $300,000 car. And, so I think you see those kind of things where, you scratch your head. A guy in the locker room may have bought like this Louis Vuitton bag, and then the next week you see every single body trying to buy a Louis Vuitton bag, a guy buy a Louis Vuitton. I mean, so we have this mentality, I think, in part, is that we all want to be like that next guy, and that becomes part of the biggest problem as well. So I've seen a lot, and I've tried not to really make this book about the things that I see. I wanted to make it more macro and talk about generally some of the decision and some of the principle, looking at hundreds and hundreds of players and looking for the reoccurring themes. That's why I created like two of the characters in the book called, Big Baller Tom, as indicative of the decision made by so many of those players, and Steady John as a way to talk about, the guy who may be a little bit lavish, but he also understands that money has limits, and understanding those limitations is so important.
You played for the Warriors. You work for the Warriors. They won a championship the first time since 1975. How exciting was it for you to see the Warriors break through and get a title?
This is like one of those things where, I played 10 years with the Warriors. I went to Orlando. We had a chance to go to the finals there. And, I came back to California, and to have a chance to go back and be a part of that team, I think speaks to what we were talking about earlier, which is the whole, how you leave is just as when you leave an organization, and making sure that you do things the right way. And for me, I've always tried to do things the right way, but to come back and to really be part of this extraordinary journey. I mean, it was almost destined, the way that this team played this year, the passion, the fans, to be there in the lean years when, you had winning 16 games. But, I always used to appreciate the fact that we were terrible. I mean, we were so terrible at times. And you would look up in the stands, and the people in the stands would be just in as much pain as we were. And I just wanted them to have an opportunity to really understand what it means to have a winning franchise. And we started doing that under We Believe, under Don Nelson at the end of my career there in Golden State. But to have this experience and to be a part of it just from the outside looking in, and to see the experience of the fans, and to see this team, the match all year to this inevitability almost, and really playing what I consider some of the most amazing basketball, and really captivating the whole Bay Area and the country, and dare I say the world. It was extraordinary, and to top it off with the championship celebration was truly extraordinary.
So you get a ring as well, correct?
I'm still negotiating that. No,
Okay.
I don't know. I really don't. But I honestly will be so. I was so tickled to be part of the parade that that was more important for me than anything. But if I'm surprised and get a ring, that would be great as well. But nothing could take away, I think, from the feeling and that kind of. Just exhilaration when a team, after waiting 40 years, get a chance to win. I mean, that is just that's amazing.
Fans, make sure you go to his website, adonalfoyle.com. Also, go hit this man up on Twitter at afoyle3131 and support all the great things going on with Adonal Foyle. The book, Winning the Money Game, the author, Adonal Foyle. Adonal, it was a pleasure talking to you. Wish you nothing but the best of luck moving forward. Let's do it again.
Man, thank you so much. Anytime, man. This was awesome. And thanks for all your support. I really do appreciate it.
Take care.
All right. Be well.